picture this scenario. You are just sitting on your couch, maybe watching a movie, and your phone buzzes.
Right.
You glance down, it's a text message from your bank, and it says there is some suspicious activity on your account, a charge of, something like $800, and you need to click the link immediately to verify it wasn't you.
Which is terrifying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the timing is uncanny because you actually just bought something online an hour ago. The language is perfectly professional. I mean, there are no weird typos. It feels highly urgent, perfectly human, and incredibly real. So your heart rate spikes, you panic for a second, and you click the link.
And that is exactly what they want you to do.
Right, but that message isn't from your bank, and it isn't from a human being at all. You have just stepped into a completely automated trap.
It is the digital equivalent of a snare. It's perfectly designed for your specific psychology. And the moment your finger taps that screen, the damage is done almost instantaneously.
And yesterday, June 12th, 2026, the architect of the AI behind that very trap decided to basically hunt the trappers down.
Yes, they did.
Google launched a massive, totally unprecedented civil lawsuit against a cybercrime syndicate that had been weaponizing Google's own artificial intelligence, specifically their Gemini model, to orchestrate these scams on an industrial scale.
Right.
So our mission today for this deep dive into the source material is to really explore this lawsuit, because this isn't just a patch or a security update. It is the first offensive legal strike in a completely new era of digital warfare.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is that we are witnessing the privatization of international cyber enforcement. This is the very first affirmative litigation by a major tech company that directly targets malicious actors for abusing AI models to defraud the public.
Yeah, it's huge.
It really is. We are officially moving from a defensive, reactive posture, just trying to block bad traffic, to offensive legal and technological strike.
Okay. Let's unpack this. Because to really understand why Google took this historic step, we have to look at the enemy they are fighting.
We do.
And the scale is, honestly, it's almost hard to wrap your head around. Based on the source material, we are looking at a highly organized network known as Outsider Enterprise. They are based out of China, and they have been running these massive financial scams and smishing campaigns.
Smishing meaning SMS phishing, text message scams.
Right, exactly. But the sheer volume here is staggering. They built a sprawling infrastructure that included over 9,000 fraudulent websites. 9,000?
Yeah.
All specifically designed to steal credentials and financial data. And to drive people to those sites, they sent out approximately 2.5 million fraudulent text messages.
To put that into perspective, building 9,000 unique, convincing websites historically required a massive human workforce.
Oh, absolutely.
You need developers to code the HTML. You need designers to scrape and mimic the exact visual assets of real banks. Plus, network engineers to manage the SSL certificates so the sites actually look secure to your browser.
So you get that little lock icon?
Exactly. And administrators to register all those domains. Doing that by hand or even with older automation tools, it takes months of coordinated effort and massive overhead.
So this isn't like a lone hacker in a dark basement fishing with a single rod. This is a massive automated commercial fishing trawler using AI sonar to just scoop up everything in the ocean.
That is a highly accurate way to look at it. And the sonar in this case was Google's Gemini. Outsider Enterprise didn't just use AI to write a couple of tricky text messages.
Right.
They used the language model to automate the entire life cycle of the fraud. They used it to write the code for those 9,000 fake domains in seconds.
In seconds. Wow.
Yeah, and they used it to manage the database of victims. AI allowed them to scale their operations at a speed that was quite literally impossible before these large language models became widely available.
But sending out 2.5 million text messages that's just logistics, right? Effectiveness is another beast entirely.
Very true.
Because there's a 2024 study conducted by Brightside AI that compared traditional phishing campaigns to these new AI-driven ones. And if you look at traditional phishing emails, the kind written by humans that we've been dealing with for 20 years, they have an average click rate of about 12%.
Which is still incredibly high, all things considered.
It is. But when you look at AI-generated phishing emails, the click rate jumps to a terrifying 54%.
Yeah, more than half of the people who receive an AI-generated phishing message will engage with it. You really have to let that sink in.
I honestly have a hard time believing that. Over half, even with modern email providers and cellular carriers heavily filtering our inboxes. I mean, how are these messages even making it to the user's screen in the first place for them to click on?
Right.
Doesn't the system just flag a mass text blast?
This raises an important question, and it really comes down to understanding the mechanism of semantic variation.
Semantic variation.
Yeah. See, traditional spam filters look for specific, repeated strings of text. So if an algorithm sees the exact phrase, click here to verify your account sent 2 million times from a block of IP addresses, it catches the pattern and blocks it.
Right. It recognizes the fingerprint of the spam.
Precisely. It uses string matching and hash matching, but generative AI doesn't work like that.
Because it's not copying and pasting.
Exactly. Outsider Enterprise used Gemini to generate 2.5 million unique semantic variations of the exact same scam. The AI alters the phrasing, the vocabulary, the syntax, and the sentence structure for every single message.
Oh, wow. So every text is technically a brand new combination of words.
Yes. So to a traditional spam filter, it doesn't look like a mass blast at all. It looks like 2.5 million unique, organic, one-on-one conversations.
That is wild.
The filter just has no recurring pattern to catch, so the messages slip right through to your phone.
So the defense mechanisms we've relied on for decades are just completely blind to this.
Completely blind. And once the message gets to the user, the psychological manipulation takes over.
Right.
For decades, traditional phishing relied on bulk sending with low-quality text. You could usually spot them because of, poor grammar, weird formatting, or obvious spelling errors.
Right, the Nigerian prince emails.
Exactly. But AI perfectly adapts its tone to the context of the victim. It can analyze public data to sound exactly like a specific corporate entity or even a regional government agency. It is incredibly adept at generating psychological urgency at an industrial scale.
Because it knows exactly what buttons to push.
Yeah. The criminals operating outside our enterprise, they don't need to understand the nuances of the English language or local customs. The AI does all the heavy lifting of sounding perfectly human.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if you have ever sat through a corporate cybersecurity training, or even just watched the morning news, you've been trained to look for typos to spot a scam.
Right. Check the spelling.
Exactly. Look for weird grammar. But that advice, based on our deep dive into these sources, it is now completely obsolete.
Utterly obsolete.
Think of traditional phishing like a burglar trying every doorknob on a street to see what's unlocked. AI phishing is like a burglar who instantly reads your diary, learns the exact knock your best friend uses, and mimics their voice through the door. It is weaponized intimacy.
Weaponized intimacy is a chilling way to phrase it, but it is entirely accurate.
Yeah.
It creates a fundamental crisis of trust.
Yeah.
When the digital output is flawless, our traditional heuristics, our mental shortcuts for detecting deception, they fail entirely. And when those defenses fail at a 54% click rate, well, the financial damage compounds exponentially.
So what does this all actually mean? We arrive at Google fighting back in a New York court. They're suing Outsider Enterprise, seeking an injunction to stop them.
Yes.
But I have to push back here for a second. Google is filing a civil lawsuit in New York against a shadowy cyber syndicate based in China. How on earth do you enforce that?
It sounds impossible, right?
Yeah. It really does. We are talking about operators sitting in a country with a completely different legal framework, and one that historically does not exactly rush to cooperate with U.S. civil courts on intellectual property or cybercrime. Enforcing a New York subpoena in Beijing just seems like a fantasy.
You are hitting on the exact problem of transnational jurisdiction.
Right.
Serving papers to a decentralized syndicate overseas is a bureaucratic nightmare, and it often leads to a dead end. But the brilliant part of Google's strategy here isn't just legal. It is technological. The lawsuit isn't merely about getting a judge to tell Outsider Enterprise to stop.
Then what is the actual mechanism? I mean, how does a lawsuit translate into a technological weapon?
The legal filing provides the essential legal cover and authority for Google to aggressively deploy its own infrastructure against the attackers.
Oh, I see.
Think about it. Google is using its own AI to track, identify, and block these frauds across its ecosystem. By entering into formal litigation, Google can utilize the legal discovery process to demand server logs.
Ah, so they get the data.
Exactly. They follow the financial paper trails of the hosting companies Outsider Enterprise uses and subpoena the payment processors. Then, they feed all that intelligence back into their own defensive AI models.
So they are analyzing the exact patterns of how the syndicate abused the Gemini API in the first place.
Yes. They monitor the prompting behavior. How does Outsider Enterprise ask the AI to build a fake website? What specific commands do they use?
Like tracking their digital footprints.
Exactly. Google's defensive AI learns those specific attack patterns and actively shuts down their access in real time. It blocks the newly generated fake domains from search results before they even go live.
Wow.
So the same generative technology that the attackers are using to create the scams is becoming the ultimate adversarial defense mechanism to hunt them down.
That is an incredible cat and mouse game. It really means tech companies are no longer just providing the software. They are acting as prosecutors, digital forensic investigators, and frontline defenders all at once.
They have to be. State law enforcement simply cannot move fast enough to counter AI-driven threats.
Because the bureaucracy of traditional law enforcement moves in months and years.
And generative AI moves in milliseconds.
Which really forces us to zoom out and look at the macro cost of all of this, because Outsider Enterprise is just one syndicate.
Right, just a drop in the bucket.
And when you look at the macroeconomic data from the reports in our sources spanning 2025 and 2026, the scale of this shadow economy is staggering. By the end of 2025, there were over 7.8 million reported cybercrimes globally.
And that's just 7.8 million reported. We have to assume the actual number is significantly higher.
Because people don't report it.
Exactly, given how many individuals and corporations refuse to report breaches out of embarrassment or just fear of reputational damage.
And the financial toll is devastating. The global cost of AI-driven cybercrime surpassed $193 billion in 2025 alone.
Let that number sink in.
$193 billion extracted from the global economy in a single year. And when a company actually suffers a breach related to AI, the average cost hits $5.72 million per incident.
Those figures represent a highly capitalized, technologically advanced global enterprise. Cybercrime is no longer a nuisance. It is an industry with R&D departments, HR structures, and profit margins that rival legitimate multinational corporations.
So Google's lawsuit is essentially the opening salvo in what is going to be a very long, very complex war.
Without a doubt.
But wait, if Google is entirely successful here, let's say they use this lawsuit to completely lock Outsider Enterprise out of Gemini and dismantle their immediate infrastructure.
Okay.
Couldn't the syndicate just go somewhere else? I mean, there are dozens of incredibly powerful AI models out there now.
You've identified the single biggest structural flaw in trying to police generative AI. The phenomenon is called model evolution or model migration.
Model migration.
Yeah. If Google or OpenAI or Anthropic lock down their proprietary corporate-controlled models, these criminal syndicates will inevitably just migrate to open-source models.
Because open-source models can be downloaded and run locally on the criminal's own private servers.
Exactly. There are no API limits. There are no corporate safety guardrails. They can strip away whatever ethical constraints the original developers coded into the model.
Right, because they control the server.
They can host these open source models in jurisdictions that simply do not care about U.S. court orders. The underlying math and architecture of large language models is out in the wild now. You just can't unring the bell.
So as open source models become just as powerful as the proprietary ones, the reliance on big tech's infrastructure decreases.
Exactly, which makes it exponentially harder to track and shut down these operations because they are no longer borrowing Google's servers to commit the crime.
Well, if the criminals can just migrate to other models and keep producing this flawless, highly persuasive fake content on their own servers, how do we protect everyday people? I mean, if we can't patch the AI, we have to patch human psychology.
Yes.
But we just established that people are clicking these links 54% of the time. What does user education even look like in this environment?
It requires a fundamental societal shift toward what cybersecurity experts call a zero-trust architecture, but applied to everyday human behavior.
Okay, so what does a zero-trust mindset actually look like for you or me on a Tuesday afternoon when our phone buzzes?
It means the default assumption for any unsolicited digital communication must be that it is a highly sophisticated forgery.
So just assume everything is fake.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if the text uses your nickname or references a recent purchase or comes from a number that looks exactly like your bank. Zero trust means you never verify information through the channel it arrived in.
So if your bank texts you a link about fraud,
You do not click the link.
right?
Ever. You close the messaging app, you open a fresh browser, you manually type in the bank's verified web address, log in securely, and check your messages there. Or you call the number on the back of your physical credit card.
But that requires a level of digital friction that we've spent the last 20 years trying to eliminate. I mean, we built these incredibly smooth, frictionless smartphones so we could do everything instantly with one tap.
Right.
And now, to survive this AI landscape, we have to artificially inject friction back into our daily lives just to stay safe.
It is a massive behavioral hurdle.
Oh.
We are fighting decades of conditioned convenience. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, governments are caught in an incredibly difficult balancing act trying to manage this friction globally.
Right, because governments are looking at that $193 billion bleeding and trying to stop it, but they don't want to kill the golden goose of AI innovation.
It is the ultimate regulatory tightrope. Governments and international bodies need to create agile legal frameworks that severely punish the abuse of AI. But, if a regulatory body in the US or Europe passes a draconian law that heavily restricts how AI can be developed.
Like requiring invasive monitoring of all user prompts to prevent fraud.
Exactly. If they do that, they risk suffocating technological innovation. The companies in those heavily regulated regions will immediately fall behind in the global technological race compared to nations with looser rules.
Right, capital just flows to the path of least resistance.
Exactly. It requires a surgical approach to legislation, which, historically, is not something global governments are particularly good at when it comes to rapidly emerging tech.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. So, to pull all of this together and recap the journey of this deep dive into our sources today, we have officially crossed a critical threshold.
We have.
AI automation has advanced to the point where it allows for surgical, highly effective strikes on hundreds of thousands of people simultaneously. We have moved past the era of the misspelled scam email into an era of weaponized intimacy, turning cybercrime into a $193 billion industry with a terrifying 54% success rate.
But sobering.
It really is. And it's forcing tech giants like Google to completely rewrite the rules of digital defense. They are stepping into the arena as private prosecutors, using adversarial AI and affirmative legal action against syndicates halfway across the world just to try and stem the tide.
It is a profound shift in the architecture of the internet and how we enforce the law within it. But, as we reflect on Google's unprecedented lawsuit and the ongoing arms race, there's a lingering paradox that we really need to consider, especially concerning that hurdle of model migration we talked about.
Let's hear it.
Well, we generally celebrate the open source movement because it democratizes technology.
Yeah.
Making these powerful AI models free and available to the public takes power out of the hands of a few massive tech monopolies, right?
Right. It gives it to independent developers, researchers, and just everyday users globally.
Exactly. But if the ultimate solution for criminal syndicates when they get locked out of corporate models like Gemini is simply to migrate to those open source models that nobody can centrally control or shut down, does that mean the very democratization of AI is exactly what guarantees we will never be fully safe from it?
Wow. That is a heavy, incredibly complex question to chew on. Is the freedom of the technology the exact thing that guarantees its weaponization? We are going to leave you to mull that one over. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Stay curious out there. Definitely stay skeptical of your text messages and keep learning. We will catch you next time.